red versus blue, but it's state versus you. If you needed one more example where federal, state, and local authorities don't care about you at all, they don't care about your rights or your life, take a listen to this.
A DEA agent accused of killing a cyclist in Salem while on duty had his case presented before a federal appeals court today in Seattle.
At the center of today's hearing was whether the agent can claim immunity from state prosecution because he was on duty, an on-duty federal agent. So it's state versus federal here. Fox 12 investigative reporter Ezra Kaplan has been following the case and brings us the story now. Ezra?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, this morning, each side was allowed about 10 minutes to argue their case in front of the appellate judges. The debate centers around a complex legal theory anchored in the idea that federal law supersedes state law. But at the heart of this case is the tragic death of a mother, a wife, and a pillar of the Salem community.
So the bottom line is that it's not about federal law, it's not about state law, it's really about a human being ending the life of another human being and not wanting to take personal responsibility over it. This is another example of qualified immunity. I hope this message gets popularized because I suspect that most Americans, or at least a high percentage of Americans, have never even heard of or considered the concept of qualified immunity, where you can declare yourself, if you're a federal or state agent, you can declare yourself immune from any and all prosecution, even if you commit a crime, even if you end a life.
March 28th, 2023, Margane Allen was riding her bike home from work in Southeast Salem. Video from that day shows a black pickup truck running a stop sign moments before striking and killing the cyclist. Behind the wheel was DEA Special Agent Samuel Landis, who, according to court documents, was conducting surveillance of a suspected fentanyl dealer. Landis...
Okay, keep that in mind. He was conducting surveillance. He wasn't in emergency pursuit. And even when people are in emergency pursuit, like ambulance drivers, EMTs, paramedics, and even the cops, they have to exercise extreme safety because their whole issue, their whole existence centers around public safety. So why in the pursuit of an emergency would you put other lives at risk? The answer is you wouldn't. So this is just surveillance, not an emergency situation.
And fallen behind the rest of the surveillance team and was trying to catch up when he allegedly struck Allen on her bicycle.
The testimony at the grand jury was that there was no urgency and that there was no hot pursuit.
After months of delay, Landis was charged with criminally negligent homicide on September 6th in Marion County Circuit Court. But Landis's lawyers asked to have the case moved to a federal court so that...
In other words, what Landis is saying here, Landis is saying, he's telling his attorneys, hey, I got myself in a little bit of trouble. I ended a life. Oops, I'm sorry. Hey, can you take this out of the state courts and put it on the federal level? Because if I have a trial under the federal level, I will be likely to be granted qualified immunity where I don't have to accept any responsibility for ending this innocent woman's life. This is the epitome of, you've got an agent whose sole job it is to imprison people who haven't committed crimes, put people in a cage for victimless crimes, but he doesn't want to be held responsible and accountable for committing a real crime. It is next level hypocrisy.
He could use a defense of federal immunity.
And so the immunity doctrine says if the person is acting as a federal agent, then they are immune from state prosecution.
U.S. District Judge Michael McShane granted that request in December of last year, moving the case to the district court in Eugene.
Why would there even be an exception like that? Why would federal, state, or local officials grant themselves qualified immunity from any and all prosecution, even if they commit a crime? Why would they do that? Only a criminal would do that. Only the criminally minded would do that. Only psychopaths would grant themselves qualified immunity even if they committed a crime. There's no other reason for that. It's not for your well-being. It's not for my well-being. It's not for the general welfare.
Oregon Attorney General's office appealed that decision and today argued in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that the case should stay in state court.
So normally you actually wouldn't be able to get an appeal heard before you've resolved the entire case. But this is a special circumstance because if the case should not be in federal court, then waiting until it's been heard is a colossal waste of resources and time. And so forth.
An attorney for the state of Oregon argued to the appellate judges that running the stop sign wasn't necessary for Landis to do his job as a DEA agent.
You talk about and focus on urgency with legitimate justification, but are you almost suggesting that there needs to be a necessity for him to have run the stop sign?
Yes, definitely. When a federal officer violates state traffic law, their conduct will only be necessary in that circumstance when there is some urgency or emergency that requires them to do so.
Landis's lawyers countered that
it's amazing the judge would even ask this. Are you suggesting that there would have to be some kind of emergency for him to run the stop sign? I mean, isn't he a federal agent? Can't he pretty much do whatever he wants? That sounds like it's what she's saying.
running the stop sign was perceived as necessary at the time, regardless of how it seems now.
Everybody can say right now that wasn't the right decision. We know that because we know what happened. But what did he know at the time? Was it reasonable, given everything that he knew about the surveillance, about the need to stay in touch with the team, about the dangerousness of this fentanyl dealer? All of that given, was it reasonable? It was a mistake of judgment. We know that. It was a tragedy that happened. But he made that reasonable decision in the context of law enforcement surveillance.
While immunity...
So what they're saying is, it was such a dangerous situation that it warranted the DEA agent in pursuit of, honest surveillance of a fentanyl dealer. Because there was such a dangerous drug dealer out there, we have the ability to disregard innocent human life, Judge. Don't you understand that? Doesn't everybody understand? How come nobody accepts this in here?
Is at the center of the case. Appellate judges are only tasked with answering the question of whether the case should be removed from the state court into the federal court.
Really, it's about the removal issue. What should this case be in federal court? And I think the answer is going to be yes or no. And if the answer is no, then it gets kicked back to state court. If the answer is yes, it goes back to the federal district court. And then...
That's the hallmark of the injustice system. It shouldn't matter if it's a federal, state, or local court. A man killed an innocent woman and should be brought to justice. He should pay restitution. That would be the right thing to do. There shouldn't ever be a consideration that there's qualified or prosecutorial immunity for anybody. I don't care if you're talking about a judge, a lawyer, a cop, a politician, a president. It doesn't matter. They should be viewed as human beings just like us. And there should be no exception for human beings who consider themselves more special than the rest of us. If you consider yourself more special to the rest of us to where you believe that you can commit a crime and escape any and all accountability and prosecution, then you are a freaking psychopath. If you even consider it, you're a psychopath.
Next, you would have to decide, okay, does the immunity defense apply?
If the case remains in federal court, it doesn't mean that the immunity defense automatically works for Landis. His team will still have to show that running the stop sign was part of his work as a DEA agent. Either way, the victim's family will still be able to bring a civil lawsuit against Landis's employer, which in this case would be the United States of America. For now, the case is on pause while both sides wait for a decision from the Court of Appeals. Reporting in studio.
Again, it's not red versus blue, it's state versus you. This DEA agent lives his life and has a profession where he imprisons people for victimless crimes, and then he seeks to escape any and all accountability when he actually commits a crime. It's extreme hypocrisy on beast mode level.